They say a week is a long time in politics, but in 2026, a single Sunday can actually reshape the map of the world. Today, the headlines are pulling in three different directions. In the Persian Gulf, a massive armada is positioning itself for what the White House calls a final reckoning with Tehran. And in Abu Dhabi, the world's best hope for a Ukraine peace deal has just been put on ice, with President Zelensky citing Washington's distraction as the cause for the delay. And in New Delhi, a new axis of power is forming as the India-Arab League Delhi Declaration officially challenges the aging architecture of the UN Security Council. And is the United States' pursuit of maximum pressure 2.0 creating a power vacuum that the Global South is all too ready to fill? And I'm Selma El-Fiki, and this is In Focus. And joining us for this deep dive is Mr. Meher Nicholas Ferdsley, the Managing Director of the World Pensions Council and a global authority on sovereign risk and the shifting tectonic plates of the world economy. Mr. Meher, it's a pleasure to have you. Let me start off with the most kinetic development. The USS Abraham Lincoln is leading a strike group towards the Gulf, and the Trump administration is threatening not just the Iranian regime, but its nuclear facilities and its internal security apparatus. Yet looking at the market, sir, oil is down 18% since January. We're seeing the largest naval buildup at the moment in years, yet the war premium in oil prices seems to have maybe vanished. From a sovereign risk perspective, why is capital ignoring the drums of war?
I'm delighted to join you today.
Thank you.
To answer your question, I would say yes and no. So yes and no. So you're right. The price of oil fell dramatically in the past 6, 7, 8 months, but it had little to do with the so-called, war premium in the Persian Gulf or in Israel. It was linked to something else, in my opinion. It was linked in part to another war, the war between Russia and Ukraine, and in part with the perception, rightly or wrongly, that OPEC Plus or OPEC was not serious anymore about quotas because, what triggered the decline of oil, once again, in my personal opinion, is the infighting between Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi. So I think that's the real reason why the price of oil went down, and it has little to do or nothing to do with Iran or Israel or Palestine, right? But anyway, you're right. As a context, as a context to what's happening today in the Gulf, we can say it's happening within the broader context of a weakness in the price of oil, and the same can be true about Venezuela. So what happened in Venezuela 4 weeks ago was not as big a shock as expected because it happened within the backdrop of a very generous oversupply of energy. So when something is not scarce, usually the price goes down. So the timing for Trump, the timing of hitting Venezuela was good from that perspective. And likewise today, if Trump goes ahead and if he attacks Iran in the next 48 hours, the timing is good for him.
The national defense strategy we discussed earlier, which is the Donroe doctrine, focuses on a regional terrain. Is this Armada move a genuine attempt at a regime change, do you think, or is it just a massive sunk cost play to keep the Middle East from drifting towards the BRICS sphere?
So here, we have to be cautious. Once again, things may not be what they seem. What do I mean here? If you are European or if you are Middle Eastern or Asian, you look at Trump and the Trump White House, and it reminds you of George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, right? After all, it's the Gulf. After all, it's an American armada. After all, it's a US president. After all, perceived of being friendly to the Israeli right and far right. In the days of Bush and Cheney, it was Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. Today, it's Prime Minister Netanyahu. But I would say it's an illusion. Why am I saying it's an illusion? Because Trump is very, very different from Sharon, Netanyahu, and Bush. Very different. Trump is not a neoconservative at all. So regime change, why not? But if the price to pay is cheap, so, and we saw it in Venezuela. So in Venezuela, what did Trump do? He only removed one member of a clan in power. And that clan in power is the sort of neo-Bolivarian, Stalinist government of Venezuela. And now, what did he do in the past 3 weeks? He's on very good terms with the neo-Stalinist Bolivarian government of Venezuela, and the Europeans were shocked, and the UN was shocked, and the Nobel Committee was shocked, because they sincerely believed that Trump was another George W. Bush, exporting American democracy blindly. That is not what Trump is. So in reality, I think Trump doesn't care who rules Iran. If it's a Shiite, Mitvali,
Yes. Yeah.
Jafari theologian,
I
or a
think it's all
prince.
about the crude and the oil, basically, isn't it? Like, more or less. Is that what you're?
In part,
Yeah.
but without wanting to like make a wordplay or a pun, there's a cruder truth. So people are fixating on oil and gas and Israel, and they say that the nuclear, right? The nuclear issue is linked to Israel's national security. The production of ballistic missiles by Iran is also linked to Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi's security. So all that is true, but there's a bigger issue here. I think it's the Chinese-American rivalry. So Trump is a neo-realist. I'm not saying he doesn't care about Israel or Saudi Arabia, but I think to him, Israel and Saudi Arabia is not very important, not very high on the list of things he cares about. He's focusing very fiercely on one single issue, the technological industrial rivalry with China. And from that perspective, China has something immensely important in the eyes of Trump. It is the New Silk Road. And that New Silk Road connects in the east Guangdong and Hong Kong to the west. You could say it's Budapest and Athens, right? So the western part of New Silk Road would be Hungary and Greece, and the eastern part, South China. And what you have in the middle of the New Silk Road? Well, you have Iran. So Iran is really at the center of China's New Silk Road, and it's much more than logistics. The New Silk Road is about high-tech, civil engineering, construction. It's about maritime transportation, modern shipyard, building giant airports, high-speed rails. In all these fields, technologically and financially, China is now ahead of America. In part because of R&D money being spent, but also in part because of the New Silk Road. And so if you are Trump, if you believe that there's one issue America cares about, it is that rivalry with China. It's a geo-economic, industrial, financial rivalry. Hitting Iran, what does it mean? You're hitting the middle of China's New Silk Road.
Okay.
It is the best way to destroy it.
Yeah, Mr. Furtzley, okay, you've often written about the end of the Bretton Woods era. If the U.S. successfully strikes Iranian infrastructure, what do you think happens to the insurance premiums, if you can explain to us a little bit, and the safe haven status of the dollar in a region that provides 30% of the global transit?
It's a $1 billion, $1 trillion question. It's impossible to assess because there are so many variables which are interconnected. So it would be dramatic. So it would be something very dramatic. I think it's predicated on how long and how serious things are. What I'm coming at is, the key word I think here is entanglement.
Okay.
Why entanglement?
In what sense entanglement?
It's being dragged on the ground. So in having to send not only Green Berets and special forces like they did in Venezuela, but having to do just like George W. Bush did in Baghdad, having to send tens of thousands of US Marines on the ground in Balochistan, Khuzestan, and Tabriz, right?
Okay.
So if there is a physical entanglement of US soldiers on the ground, then yes, it means that the war has dragged on. So yes, if the war drags on, that is the worst case scenario, then it could be very messy for insurance premia,
Yeah.
for the dollar, for many things, right?
Yes.
But we're not there yet. So it's not the most likely scenario.
Well,
So there are two.
just in case we come to that scenario, that's what we're like, what you think might be happening.
Yeah, then you're right. It would be a big mess. A mess which is hard to measure. But once again, if you look at the signals, the military signals, so the kind of military hardware the Americans have now surrounding Iran is not meant to do that. It is meant to send cruise missiles. It is meant to strike hard and deep with airplanes, with bombers, advanced bombers. It is meant for that. The maximum they can do is using these aircraft carriers, using the bases they have in Bahrain and Abu Dhabi, etc., sending special forces for quick in-out, very limited operations. It has nothing to do with the build-up, if you remember, the build-up we had in the weeks preceding the Gulf War. It was really, in the northeast of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, you had huge, gigantic tent cities, right? It was, the famous village of Hafr al-Batin. So Hafr al-Batin in Saudi Arabia was a village, and all of a sudden, with the influx of 400,000 US soldiers, it became a gigantic tent city. There's nothing like that in Bahrain or Qatar or Abu Dhabi or anywhere in the world suggesting that America is going to send a massive amount of soldiers on the ground. So what I'm coming at is, I think personally, there are two possible outcomes. The first one is not.
Yeah,
the first one is nothing.
Can we be a bit brief, Mr. Ferdsley, about that? Because I want to move to my next topic with you, if possible, please.
So briefly, the first one, very nicely,
okay.
Under pressure, Iran makes concessions, which they were supposed to do, if you remember, end of June. End of June, who ended the 12-day war between Israel and Iran very theatrically? It was Trump. Trump, and he did it in sync with the Iranians, and it was a face-saving mechanism. End of June, 6 months ago or 7 months ago.
Yes.
And he was expecting, after saving the regime, that the regime maybe would be nice to him and would make a few concessions. They refused. So now he's using the big stick. Either they make a few concessions in the next 2-3 days, or option 2 or plan B, he's going to hit them with cruise missiles and bombers.
Yeah. Okay. Now, sir, OPEC Plus, they met today in a Sunday scramble to keep production cuts in place. If the war breaks out and the price stays low due to the supply glut, does that effectively bankrupt the very allies like the Saudis, the US is trying to protect? What do you think?
Well, you're right. That is a big issue, not necessarily linked to the Iranian-American crisis, but it's a big issue. The price of oil is not high enough, clearly. There is dissent within OPEC, clearly. Venezuela, which is the founder, the founder of OPEC is Venezuela. It's a Venezuelan economist called Juan Pablo Perez Alfonso. He's the genius who got the idea in the late 50s, early 60s to create OPEC. And now guess what? Venezuela is no longer a core member of OPEC. What Venezuela does is decided in Washington, D.C. So really, OPEC is weak. It has never been as weak for many, many years. And the fact that Russia is entangled in Ukraine, the fact that there's now a bad vibe between Riyadh and Abu Dhabi is not good. So suppose there's a war. Suppose there's an American strike on Iran in 2 days, which is possible, and the Iranians retaliate by sending a few Zodiacs on the Hormuz Strait, hitting a few tankers, whatever. That may, I think, kick up the barrel of oil by $15, $20, but it's not much. So even the worst case scenario will, I think, create a mini limited oil shock. It's nothing at all, nothing compared to what we saw in the previous Gulf Wars, where we really had big oil shocks.
Okay. Mr. Maher, if you are a pension fund manager in London or Singapore, looking at the Gulf today, do you think, are you de-risking from the dollar, or are you betting that Trump's blink is more likely than a blast?
Already, so people vote with their feet or with their money, right? They don't always vote with by going to the on election day to the booth and putting the name of a candidate in an envelope. They vote most of the time with their money, right? And we've seen a debasement of the US dollar. Why is why the price of gold so high? Because central banks, all of them, including the Federal Reserve Board, they've been printing too much money, and they use the fancy word to describe it. They call it quantitative easing, and in reality, it never really stopped. So that's why, Bitcoin and more than Bitcoin, that's why, physical assets like gold are such success. But the debasement of the currency also hits the pound in Britain and the euro in Europe to a lesser extent, right? So all these big currencies and the yen, the yen in Japan. So these are the big reserve currencies. They've all been hit. So yes, you're right. Big pension funds and big sovereign wealth funds, smart money, they've been voting by transferring some of their assets to either physical assets like gold, or also to, for example, infrastructure assets. So they've been buying airports, they've been buying ports, they've been buying farmland, real assets as a hedge, as a protection against the collapse in value of the dollar or the pound or the euro.
Yeah. Okay. Let's pivot to the fallout. Today was supposed to be the start of the Abu Dhabi trilateral talks, and Zelensky has now pushed that to February the 4th, explicitly blaming the situation with the US and Iran. Is Zelensky's admission a public signal that the US can no longer lead on two major fronts at once? Has the distraction doctrine become Russia's greatest ally, do you think, sir?
Well, perhaps, and that's once again my personal opinion, perhaps Zelensky is an idiot. And perhaps the White House doesn't care about Europe and Ukraine. I think this is the more likely reality. So it's not that America is not capable of leading two wars simultaneously. It's about the fact that America doesn't care about Kiev or Warsaw or Brussels. But for people, of course, for people like Zelensky or Macron or Keir Starmer, that idea is hard to believe. So they are in denial, right? And they try to find reasons. They say, oh, I think Trump is distracted by Tehran and Tabriz, whatever. Once he resolves the Khorramshahr and Tehran issue, he'll be back on our side. No, Trump will never be back on Europe's side or Ukraine's side. And let's be frank. What is Trump trying to do here in the Gulf? He's not only trying to hit the Iranian regime, he's also trying to hit the Iraqi government, which is controlled by Iran. So the independence of the Iraqi government is a fiction. And how do we know it's a big fiction? Is like 5 days ago, to provoke the Americans, the Iranians decided that the next prime minister of Iraq will be Nouri al-Maliki, a member of Hizb al-Dawah, a member of the Iranian Pasdaran, a puppet in the hand of the Iranians. And it shows you that the parliament, the Iraqi parliament itself, is controlled by Iran. And by the way, many of the policemen and soldiers who were spearheading the repression in Iran 2 weeks ago. So many of the ruthless Pasdaran who killed thousands of poor Iranian civilian demonstrators 2 weeks ago, guess what? They were Iraqis. They were Iraqi Pasdaran, Iraqi Hezbollah, Iraqi Hezbollah, who went to Tehran to help their masters, the Iranian regime. So this is really what Trump is focusing on, because just like the Chinese, for Trump, Iraq and Iran, they are Western Asia. It's no longer the Middle East. The Middle East is a French-English or Anglo-French invention. And Trump uses, or the Trump thinkers, they have that focus on China. They know that for China and India, it is Western Asia. And he doesn't want them to control Western Asia with its airports, its ports, New Silk Road. So he's hitting hard, he's pressuring hard Baghdad and Tehran to force them to make pro-American, anti-Chinese concessions. This is his focus. He couldn't care less about Crimea or Poland or Estonia.
We've heard rumors of a 20-point peace plan. If the U.S. is distracted, does that give Putin the leverage to demand a hard peace that the U.S. would have previously rejected?
So I think this is the distraction, to use the word you've used earlier, the distraction. 26, 30, 15 plans. And I think the Europeans and the Brits and the Ukrainians, they've argued with Trump for the past 7 weeks about the minute details of the 46 plan or the 36 point or the 15th point. It's all a waste of time. So all that is fake. And so the Brits and the Germans and the French for the past months, they spent hours and they've met several times, with something the French and the British call the coalition of the willing. And they say, we have looked deep and hard at the 26 points in the plan, and we have detailed sub-points. We have like 40, 50, 76 points about how the French and British troops, they will deploy in downtown Lviv and Kiev. All that is a waste of time. So in reality, it's a crude thing which is happening, which is redrawing the map of Ukraine. So like it or not, Mr. Macron or Madame von der Leyen or whatever, Volodymyr Zelensky, like it or not, they're going to lose 25% of their land in the coming weeks, right? And as long as that reality doesn't sink into their mind, all the rest would be a waste of time. And we saw it clearly at Davos when Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, just like that, he stabbed France and Germany and England with a smile on his face, right? So when all the others were panicking and complaining about Greenland, Mark Rutte met with his boss, his real boss, Trump, and in just 5 minutes he said, forget about it, we have a deal with America, I will take care of Greenland according to what America wants, without even pretending that he had consulted Keir Starmer or Emmanuel Macron. That's the new world we live in. It's a very crude and brutal world, but it's a real world.
While the U.S. looks at the Gulf and Ukraine, India, in the meantime, and the Arab League just signed the Delhi Declaration 2026, and they're calling for a $500 billion in trade, an independent Palestinian state, and most importantly, they're asking for a total reform of the anachronistic UN Security Council. Mr. Meher, is the Delhi Declaration the institutional birth of the Global South as a unified economic bloc that no longer needs Washington's permission, do you think?
It's sending a strong signal, very strong signal.
Okay.
And here the choice of word is not innocent. So to use a fancy term, the lexicon, right? The lexicology at the Delhi summit and the Delhi Declaration is very interesting. It's fascinating. Yes, you're right. It's sending a very powerful geo-economic message. But who's on the receiving end of that message? I think that Delhi Declaration is bad news for Israel, and it's very bad news for France, Britain, and Germany, and the European Commission.
Why, sir?
Once again, Trump couldn't care less, because basically the weakening of the UN is bad for Europe. It is not bad for America, because America itself now is weakening the UN.
Yes.
Look at what they have done in Greenland, or Venezuela.
Yes.
And also, it's bad for Israel because it says that, there is a pan-Asian solidarity, which is
There's going to
something
be
that the
another strong
Europeans,
bloc elsewhere.
yes, something that the Israelis and the Europeans deliberately ignored, thinking superficially that the Shiites don't like the Sunnis, or thinking very superficially that the Hindus of India don't like the Muslims, and the communists of China don't like the Indians and the Arabs. It's not true. There is a sense of Asian cultural, even ethnic solidarity. So the people of Asia, be they Arabs, be they Russians, Eurasian, be they Indians, be they Pakistani, be they Chinese, they belong to that big Asian Eurasian space, and they have a sense of of brotherhood or solidarity. And to them, the real enemy maybe is not Trump. Maybe to them the real enemy is NATO. That what I'm coming at is, the Delhi Declaration is bad news, but it remains to be seen for who it is bad news. And the choice of word, fascinating. They've used the word Western Asia all through the Delhi Declaration about Palestine.
Yep.
And so saying it's Western Asia, it's using the Indian nationalist, communist Chinese, Russian choice of word. And Middle East is a very Anglo-French word, and they no longer want to be called Middle East. The Saudis and the Abu Dhabians and the Omanis. That is fascinating.
They cited, sir, a zero tolerance for terror after the Pahalgam attack. Do you think India effectively is replacing the U.S. as the security guarantor for the Arab world's trade interests?
It's a long road. It's a long road. But yes, India has huge ambitions like China. And for them, the Gulf is near home. And by the way, what is one of the biggest investors today in the Iranian economy? It's India. What is one of the main trading partners of Iran today? It's India. And there, not only the Chinese are involved in modernizing and building highways, train stations, rail tracks, and ports and airports in Iran, so are the Indians. And it's the only country for whom, when Trump slapped new sanctions on the Iranian economy, he made the one exception. He told the Indians, okay, I will protect your interest. I will let you, for another 9 months, build that new port. The Indian government and state-owned enterprises are building a gigantic port in southeast Iran, in Balochistan, near the border with Pakistan, with trillions of dollars being invested by who? By Indian companies. So really that is happening, that idea that China and India are moving westward to what they call Western Asia, and that Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi and Oman are happy about it because it allows them to play the balance. When you're a mid-sized nation, you want to be able to play the dragon against the eagle or the elephant against the dragon, if you see what I mean. And so when there is balance, it gives opportunities to Arabian Gulf nations. It gives them leverage.
Yeah. Well, finally, Mr. Ferzli, looking at the big picture between the Armada and the stalled peace and the Delhi Declaration, what is the one sovereign truth investors need to hold on to for the rest of February 2026?
Clearly, we've entered the age of geoeconomics. So that reality has to sink in. So the old walls, separating on the one hand the world of diplomacy, military affairs, and on the other hand, the world of economics and finance, that wall collapsed completely, not only because of Trump, also because of China and India, etc. So, and because of that, risk is everywhere. Because of that, when you are a chief investment officer, the main guy in charge of investing billions of dollars at the helm of these big public pension funds, sovereign funds in Toronto, Sydney, Melbourne, Montreal, you have to incorporate geo-economic risk issues everywhere. When you're buying a stock, when you're buying a share, when you're buying a bond, when you're buying real estate, it's the age of geoeconomics all over, even between white, civilized, rich nations, even between America and Canada today. When you are an investor, you have huge geo-economic risks, which can hit you overnight. So you have to build your portfolio based on that. What are the risks in that new era, the age of geoeconomics?
Yeah. Well, Mr. Meher Nicholas Ferzli, thank you so much for for a masterclass in geoeconomics. We appreciate you helping us connect the dots between the streets of Delhi and the waters of the Gulf. Before we go, a final thought on the power of a name. For over a century, the term Middle East was a coordinate on a British Admiralty chart, a region defined entirely by its distance from London. But today, from the halls of New Delhi to the ministries of Riyadh, that map is being folded up. And that's all for In Focus. And I'm Salma El-Fiki. See you tomorrow.